Okay, so what's the first chart you want me to stop on, Art?
That's it, right there.
Okay, cool.
So the blue line is U.S. inflation,
Okay.
and brown line is the price of oil, WTI, the U.S. benchmark oil price. And this
Hmm.
thing goes back to 2015. I've got a version that goes back to 1950, and the two are, I mean, it's not 100% correlation, but I mean, you don't have to be a technical expert to say, wow, there's a pattern there. And so when we had the latest print on inflation, and economists were, hyperventilating and saying, oh my God, we didn't expect that. We expected, was, I mean, I'm not an economist, and don't claim to be, but what we got as far as inflation was exactly what I would have expected. It was correlative with the price of oil. It went down a little bit, so inflation went down. To Jeff's point, and Jeff and I've had this, we've had a public discussion of this. We did in Vancouver a couple of years ago.
That's where I first met both of you.
That's exactly right. And my comment to him, and I think I was the only non-economist on that stage. My comment was, "You guys don't understand what money is. I mean, you do, but you don't understand that money is nothing more than a claim on work, and work comes from energy. And so, you want to talk to me about money supply? Then I wanted you to tell me what has to happen to energy supply in order to increase or decrease the money supply, because the two are, I mean, they are not the same, but they are, one is a proxy for the other. So money is a derivative of oil, of energy price. And so you want to talk to me about increasing the money supply, what you're really saying is that you want to increase the energy supply. You want to talk to me about debt. We're gonna increase the debt, and I'm telling you, well, if money is a claim on work and energy, then debt is a lien on future work or energy. So you want to create debt, then you're going to have to pay that debt back with energy resources that are not yet being produced. Do you have them or don't you? I mean, what's your net energy worth? And so, to me, the argument that this chart is is only the partial truth is, of course, true. I mean, I'm taking a hopelessly complex system,
Right,
and
right.
I'm reducing it to two factors, but both of them, price and inflation, involve a lot of inputs that include human behavior.
Hmm.
And so, to my way of thinking, you cannot deflect the truth of this chart by bringing in money supply, because money supply is just a derivative of oil.
But I think what they would argue is that the price of oil is a derivative of the money supply.
Then
Meaning, if and I understand your argument with debt being a future claim on productivity, but if they are truly money printing, let's say, where they're creating more currency units, uh, then you see what I'm saying? Because I'll bet you if we put up a chart of M2, I don't think it would go down to the degree it did in April 20, but I know at least prior to that, it would look similar, and it would look similar after April of 2020. So I'm just trying to think this through out loud here. So I'm probably getting it wrong, but what is your rebuttal there, or is it pretty much just the same argument you just made?
I guess I don't understand the argument. So state it
The
again.
argument is, okay, so if we increase the money supply, then you're most likely going to see the price of goods and services go up, all else being equal as far as the supply side. And those goods and services would include the price of oil.
Ah,
So you see what I'm saying?
yeah. And so where economists get this wrong routinely is that they say oil or energy, whatever you want to call it, its effect is proportional to its share of the economy. Okay, so let's
Mm,
just throw out a number and say, well, maybe energy is 5% of GDP. Maybe. I mean,
Right.
I don't know if that's right, but it's
Right.
probably close. Okay, so therefore, it's a relatively small factor.
No,
Well,
it's exponential.
what I would say is fine, but you're talking about price, and I'm talking about value. And
Mm,
so, if we take a barrel of oil, and you and I've had this conversation before,
yep.
and we compute how many joules or calories of work energy is in a barrel of oil, and convert that into a man day or a man year, we find out that a barrel of oil has roughly 4.5 or 5 years of work in it, human work.
Yep.
And if you say that the median income of the United States is $44,000, or the average, I don't know which it is, let's say it's around there, then a barrel of oil, the value we get from a barrel of oil is $198,000 a barrel.
Mm,
So its effect on money and the economy and productivity is so completely in contrast to its share of GDP that you just can't dismiss it that way. And
yeah.
so
Right.
take it a step further and take those same calculations and say, well, how much oil, how much energy, how much fossil energy, oil, coal, natural gas, does the world use in a year? And it's roughly 100 billion barrels of oil equivalent. That means that we have got something like 500 billion fossil energy slaves working for the world all the time. We got 8 billion people in the world, and we've got 400 billion fossil energy slaves working. Now, when you start thinking about it like that, I'm going to say your M1, M2, M3 is a rounding error.
Yeah. Right. It's just, yeah. Yeah. It's just a unit of measurement. It doesn't really, it's not, doesn't really hold an economic value, maybe. Although I guess you could say, uh, if you increase the money supply in a in a hazardous way, a dangerous way, that it could impact even the exploration of the energy we need to be productive. I'm just thinking, like, if the whole world went through a Weimar Germany, like a hyperinflation, then
I,
productivity, you can't even,
I'm
go ahead.
in I'm in no way saying that money supply and interest rates and I'm not saying that that is unimportant. I'm not
Right.
saying that at all. It's critically important, obviously. All I'm saying is, let's start with first principles. What comes
Yeah.
from what, and
Yeah.
it
Right.
all comes from energy at the end of the day.
Art,
So
uh,
yeah.
in my space, there's a lot of people that look to nuclear energy as a solution to the problems, a lot of the problems we have today. But I know on Twitter you've said, "Whoa, time out here, guys. This might not be a panacea." And I've talked about being very bullish long term on uranium. People who ask me about what I like to invest in or what my thoughts are. So I'd love to get your ideas. Why is nuclear energy not a panacea?
Okay. Um, Nuclear energy has one use, and that
What's
is generating electric power.
right, right, right.
Electric power is 18% of the world's energy consumption. So it very well may be that nuclear energy, nuclear power, is a critical element going forward for electric power generation. Let's
Mm,
just, let me be parabolic and say it's the second coming. It's the only way that electric power generation lives and moves forward. Okay, you're solving a small part of a bigger problem, and the bigger problem is the 82%.
yeah.
The 82% is all the ships and the trains and the trucks and the the non-electrical manufacturing, the mining, all of which, you can't build a nuclear plant unless you can mine the uranium. And if you can't transport the uranium by ship, by the way, to some
Right.
place where it can be processed and it can be, put in, you get the point. It's just not that simple. So I would say that for Europe and its electric power problems going forward, nuclear is critical because nuclear is baseload. And Europe has a problem in that it's overweight on renewables and it doesn't have enough to keep the plants going when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. That's a real unfortunate situation they've got themselves into, and I don't want to argue, whether it was stupid or it just is. Okay, so for Europe, nuclear makes a lot of sense
Right.
because they got to figure out some way of supporting their electric power grid. But still, it's a relatively smaller proportion of Europe's overall energy problem. For a
Yeah.
country like the U.S., I mean, we got tons of gas. Why in the world we want to get into the environmental risk and the cost and all of that of nuclear plants when we got so much gas, we're sending it overseas? And somebody's going to say, oh, well, gas isn't clean and blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Spent uranium waste is not exactly clean either. But to your point, George, I mean, uranium might be a terrific investment. It
It's just
probably
not
is.
a panacea.
Nuclear is not. It's another one of these solutions in search of a problem. If you're talking about the world now, just for fun, I mean, can you imagine what we're talking about for nuclear power in, say, sub-Saharan Africa?
Mm.
I mean, can you even imagine when that might happen and what that might look like? I can't.
Well, I'm in the middle of Colombia right now in Medellin, which is a very modern city, but
Right?
still, even here, it'd be an
Way
uphill
off
climb.
in the future. I mean, there's so many problems. People, again, they want that bright, shiny thing that seems to solve all of their problems.
Yeah.
And how do they know about that? Because some talking head told them about it. And somebody else said, oh, yeah, I agree. And I mean, I get crucified regularly on Twitter because I have the audacity to speak heresies about nuclear energy. And
Yeah.
I'm not against nuclear energy. I'm just trying to give people the information.
Yeah.
I'm all for nuclear energy. I think it's risky. It's got some problems, but I'm not against it. I'm not against renewable. I'm not against oil. I'll tell you all the problems with oil too.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's got problems, but you got to start by understanding what it is we're dealing with. What's the terrain look like? Do you have a map? I mean, we don't just want to go running out into the wilderness and say, I'm great. I'm going to solve the problem. I mean, you probably die.
Yeah, yeah. And as a fellow rebel capitalist, because
Right.
Art's got his rebel capitalist T-shirt on, there you go. First and foremost, we got to find the truth of what's going on here, and then we got
Or
to
the
do a
truth
cost
is we
benefit
understand.
analysis.